Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, and welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Good morning, Brahim, from wherever you're joining. We'll be just giving a couple more minutes for those who are logging in, and we will have a start at approximately 8:04. Thanks so much for joining. In the meantime, can you put in the chat where you're joining from and the organization that you represent, please?
I can go first. Is that okay? So,
Okay, excellent. Morning, Chelsea, Adrian, Anik, from Jamaica, Antigua and Barbuda. Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Suriname, excellent. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so let's have a start, and while others join, they will join us. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Brittany Main Rancharan, and I am the network coordinator for the Anglophone Caribbean for the CIBIT GSP Transparency Network, and that's the capacity building initiative for transparency under the Global Support Program. And so, on behalf of the CIBIT GSP and the United Nations Environmental Program in Copenhagen Climate Center, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to join our webinar series on adaptation, reporting under the Paris Agreement and Enhanced Transparency Framework. This is a series of 5 webinars taking place over the next few weeks in October up to October 28th. And the idea is to enhance our collective understanding and capacity to report on adaptation measures in line with the Paris Agreement's ETF. And so, as we all know, the impacts of climate change are becoming increasingly severe and pervasive, making it more and more crucial to have robust, transparent reporting mechanisms for our national policies and to address and abate the impacts of climate change. So these webinars are designed to provide you with the knowledge and tools necessary to meet the reporting provisions for adaptation under the Paris Agreement, and also ensuring that your national efforts are accurately documented and communicated to the global community. So the webinar schedule, we start this today with an overview of adaptation reporting systems. So this is session 1. And then our subsequent sessions on October 15th, 21, 24th, and 28th will cover the other areas of adaptation reporting under the ETF that's also relevant for the biennial transparency report, the new reporting mechanism under the Paris Agreement. And our last session will have a global experience sharing session, which will bring together perspectives from this region and developing countries' perspective on adaptation reporting, as well as those perspectives from developed countries who have best practices to share. so from both sides. So just a little bit more of the introduction. Over the course of this webinar series, we will go into various aspects of adaptation reporting and progressively covering detailed guidance on the adaptation component of the biennial transparency report. So considering that most countries are uh, working towards reporting and developing their biennial transparency report this year by the end of December 2024. We hope that the information brought to you from this series will be very relevant for you in this um, in the height of your preparation phase for your BTRs. And we'll also have an opportunity to hear from different countries in this region and outside of the region from about their experiences, challenges, and lessons learned in preparing and reporting on adaptation, and also some of their implementation efforts. So lastly, for your time and efforts in joining us, we will also be providing certificates to those who are able to participate for all 5 sessions of our adaptation series. So at the 5th session, then we will be providing certificates to those who have been able to join all 5 sessions. So I will now take you through the course of agenda for today, and then I will introduce our speaker. So opening sessions, an overview of the workshop. So today's workshop will be covering the introduction to adaptation, reporting, and the biennial transparency report, the function of different UNF CCC adaptation reporting instruments, and in the new enhanced transparency framework arrangement. We'll have a series of Q&A and discussions, and then we'll go on to expanding the purpose of adaptation reporting, why and how countries should report it, followed by a discussion session. And then we will wrap up and close. So before I continue and ask everyone to put on their cameras, if possible, for group photo, I would like to also introduce our special guests and our co-host essentially for the next 5 sessions for the adaptation series. We have Slajana Bundalo. She is the regional coordinator for the Eurasia region of the CIBIT GSP network, and she's a part of our global team and a very experienced adaptation expert. So thank you so much, Slajana. We're so happy that you could be with us for these weeks. And welcome.
Thank you very much, Brittany. I'm very glad to participate and to work with your countries within the Anglophone-speaking Caribbean. So I hope that these sessions will be interesting to you and that information that we will share will be of use for preparation of your adaptation part of the BTR. So welcome you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So welcome all. And if you are able to, I know it's early in the morning for some, a little bit later in the morning for others, but welcoming you to put on your cameras so that we can take a group photo for our first session of the adaptation series. Okay, nice to see you all. And I'm so happy we have representation from different parts of the Caribbean. It's really nice. All right. Okay, let me take a Shanice, Sherwin, Anik. Awesome. Okay. Thanks everyone. 1, 2, 3. Cheese, smile. Excellent. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, everyone. I know it's 8 a.m. for me here in Belize, but most of us it's a little later in the rest of the region. So excellent. Thanks everyone for joining. Okay. So without further delay, then I would like to invite you back, Slajana, to go ahead and introduce our first session. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Brittany. And yes, good morning and good day to all of you. I'm holding this webinar from Europe, so this is late afternoon in this area. So I hope that I will survive. This is my third webinar today. So luckily it's a Friday and weekend begins. So please bear with me this day. So also, before I start, just to note, somebody already asked about the presentations and about the recording of this webinar. Just to note that as always, our webinars will be, or all presentations, including all 5 sessions, will be uploaded at our climate transparency platform, as well as recordings. I know that that's important for you as well as for other countries that we already had this type of the events in the Eurasia, in the Asia, Central Asia and Caucasus, Anglophone Africa, etc. And yes, people across the globe are using actually these slides as a short guidance for their adaptation reporting within the BTR. So I will share my screen now. Do you see now my slide, my initial slide?
Yes, you see it.
Okay,
Just
great.
needs to go in.
Yes, thank you. So, introduction to adaptation reporting and the BTR. Just a short explanation about information that we will share here. I would like to highlight that the presentation is mostly based on the document called Reporting Adaptation through the Biannual Transparency Report, a practical explanation of the guidance that's published in 2020 under the ICAT project, but also reflects new insights and information on adaptation reporting according to the MPGs. And this information is upgraded within the new document that is under finalization and by CBIT GSP project. So that will be available very, very soon as a new guidance with fresh or updated information. But for further reference, you can use, of course, previous guidance. You have here a link to the guidance and also this presentation that we will upload at the Climate Transparency platform. So a bit about the purpose of this presentation is actually in general to provide you information about recent reporting instruments under the UNFCCC, reporting instruments for communicating adaptation information, but also to see and to inform you how is the previous reporting system is aligned with the new guidelines and new reporting requirements within the adaptation BTR. So with that, with this presentation, we will try to answer the several main questions. So what's the biennial transparency report and why is relevant to reporting on adaptation? How do countries report under UNFCCC? What is the system for communicating and reporting on adaptation under the Paris Agreement? how has the system under Paris Agreement changed from the previous system that we know, which is called MRV, or monitor reporting and verification. Then what is the adaptation BTR intended to achieve? So what's the intention of the reporting through the BTR? And what areas do the guidelines for the adaptation BTR cover? So let's start with the biannual transparency report and its relevance to reporting on adaptation. As suggested by the name, the biannual transparency report is transparency-oriented report that has to be produced by countries every 2 years and submitted to UNFCCC. It represents a key component of the Paris Agreement transparency infrastructure that we call Enhanced Transparency Framework, or in short, ETF. In general, intention of this new framework, ETF, is to enable the COP to track progress towards achieving goals of the Paris Agreement, and along with the National Inventory Report, the other new instrument introduced by ETF, the BTR's role within this framework is to make operational the transfer of information from country parties to the UNFCCC. So within the framework outlined by the ETF, the National Inventory Report actually will operationalize the transfer information about countries' GHG emissions. On the other hand, the BTR will enable transfer of information about how countries are implementing the different aspects of the Paris Agreement through reporting on their climate actions across mitigation, adaptation, loss damage, support needed and received, etc., also including other sectors. So just some general information that actually, as we know, Enhanced Transparency Framework will come into force on the 31st December of the 2024. And countries will be expected to submit their first biannual transparency report prior to this date. So when that occurs, the ETF framework will formally replace the previous transparency arrangement under the convention called a Monitor Review Verification System, or well-known MRV. So also as a part of this transition, the Enhanced Transparency Framework will directly discontinue and replace certain aspects of the Monitor Review and Verification System. Besides other areas, this will happen to MRV system reporting infrastructure, well known to us as biannual transparency report. And it will replace both biannual report and biannual update report for Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 parties, as you can see here on the figure on this slide. So this is important since now all parties will use the same reporting instruments and guidelines, so from 2024 onwards. Also, it is important to say that not all aspects of the previous arrangements will be replaced. For example, national communication will continue to be active alongside with the BTRs. Since the new reports under the ETF will be applicable to both Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 parties, that makes a really significant change from the previous system, in which Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 parties had different reporting responsibilities which has manifested in two reporting formats and different guidelines related to their reporting obligations. Also, the next key difference between these two reporting formats, ETF and MRV, is that the enhanced transparency framework allows countries to report on adaptation, action, and loss and damage through the adaptation section, means a specific adaptation section of biannual transparency report, which we call actually a BTR. This was not possible in the BRs or BURs format, and now means that adaptation can be reported on every 2 years. So previous to this, adaptation was only intended to be reported on every 4 years through countries' national communications. So how countries communicate under the UNFCCC? So from 1994 and onwards, countries have been systematically communicating and reporting to UNFCCC and providing information in regards to their national situation, like GHG emissions, vulnerability to climate change, capacity needs, and also they reported actions that countries have taken to implement the convention, so how they are planning and implementing mitigation and adaptation actions and providing support. The reasoning of providing this information has been actually, and it's still, to provide COP with the necessary inputs to assess the overall impact of the convention's implementation. And also, these reports are vital, crucial means for exchanging information about how each country is implementing convention and for highlighting the issues, problems, gaps for non-annex countries which are facing with in this process. So according to in general, actually in the beginning, this process was conducted through the submission of the national communication, but as UNFCCC demand for more specific and deeper information on different issues, so with that broader and higher demand, the range of the instruments available for communication, this information has also grown. According to the Paris Agreement and its decisions, there are now 5 available instruments under UNFCCC that countries can use to communicate and report on adaptation. These are well-known national communications, then national adaptation plans, NDCs or national determined contributions, adaptation communications, and finally, new one, biannual transparency report. Additionally, countries can also communicate on adaptation plans through unilateral instruments, which are actually not associated with UNFCCC systems. And the most significant report of these is national adaptation plans, programs, or strategies, which are essentially the same as an app, but they are implemented unilaterally, so they are not part of official UNFCCC reporting process. So all these instruments and communication systems resulting in potentially confusing mixture of different instruments with overlapping functions and their mandates. So this mixture can be framed as we call it loose system for communicating and reporting on adaptation. So what is the system for communicating and reporting on adaptation under the Paris Agreement? This system refers to how the 5 adaptation relevant instruments work together to facilitate the transfer of information between countries and convention. In order to understand how this system works, instruments that I've already mentioned can be divided into broad groups. First one is planning-oriented instruments.
In the kitchen, and I have this meeting. I can't drink tea at my desk.
Sorry, can you mute your microphone? Thank you. So the adaptation reporting instruments for better understanding can be divided into broad groups: planning-oriented instruments and reporting instruments, as you can see here on this slide. In planning-oriented instruments, we consider NDCs or its adaptation component, NAPs, equivalent national adaptation plans and strategies, and adaptation communications, while at the other hand, reporting-oriented instruments are national communications, BTRs, and adaptation communications. The difference actually between planning-oriented and reporting-oriented instruments is based on whether an instrument is primarily function is to communicate forward-looking information or to provide backward-looking information for certain issues related to adaptation, like adaptation goals, implementation of the adaptation plans and actions, etc., etc. To try to visualize this difference between planning and reporting-oriented instruments, this figure on the slide shows how forward-looking information from the planning stages of the national adaptation processes are documented in planning-oriented instruments. For example, how is documented assessment of the vulnerabilities, setting adaptation priorities and targets, and deciding on adaptation efforts in NDC, NAPs, etc. And also it shows how forward-looking information from these planning-oriented instruments later feeds into reporting-oriented instruments and is then updated by backwards-facing information concerning how the implementation of these plans, strategies, etc., has gone. So the figure you see here also demonstrates how information from both types of the instruments should feed into the global stocktake and also in the next cycle of your national adaptation planning process. However, in practice, classifying an instrument as a simply planning-oriented or reporting-oriented, it's not always very clear, as most instruments tend to include both types of information, and that can be explained by the fact that robust planning process should consider the achievements and failures of the previous planning cycles. And as such, it is not unusual for the results of the previous planning cycles to be included in new planning documents. Also, the reporting on progress made and results achieved needs to refer to the plans and objectives that the actions being reported on. So it's a bit not clear-cut between two types of the adaptation reporting instruments. You will see also later some information about that. So also, in some cases, instruments are simply used differently by different countries. For example, national communications are also sometimes used to assess vulnerability and identify potential adaptation options, as well as to report on what has been implemented. So in this context, they are not only reporting oriented, and also adaptation communications are apparently being used primarily for communicating plans by some countries and primarily for reporting purpose by the other. So that's why adaptation communication appears in both columns as a planning-oriented and reporting-oriented instrument. The figure on this slide actually illustrates the main flows of the information between different the planning and reporting-oriented instruments, as you see on the left side of the figure, and the main flows of the information between the instruments used by countries and relevant UNFCCC processes used to review and analyze this information, which you can see on the right side of this figure. So let's start with the left side. On the far left, you can see that forward-looking information about countries' national adaptation process, for example, the climate pledge and ambitions, vulnerability to climate change, adaptation needs, adaptation actions, etc., are generally found across their NDC, national adaptation plans. Meanwhile, when moving from these instruments towards the reporting instruments on the central left of the figure, we can see that this forward-looking information should feed in either national communications, adaptation communications, or biannual transparency report, in which countries should be taking stock for their various adaptation goals, plans, and actions, and providing actually backward-facing information that informs us about the progress that is being made and what the results of this progress has been. In theory, information about the progress and results should feed back into adaptation planning processes and therefore in the future planning-oriented instruments, as countries should be taking stock of what they have achieved and learned thus far and adjusting their plans and strategies according to that. So moving to the right side of the figure, we can see the different UNFCCC-driven processes that are relevant to information about adaptation submitted by countries. These processes are divided in two types. First one is review mechanisms, located here on the center right of this figure, and provisions for increased ambitions and compliance that you can see on the far right of this slide. The right side of this part of the figure demonstrates that there are relatively few UNFCCC processes that are applied to information about the adaptation. For example, much more information submitted by countries concerning their mitigation activities and the GHG emissions has traditionally been reviewed extensively under the convention. Information submitted about the adaptation actually is only reviewed if it's included in the national communication of the Annex 1 countries. Meanwhile, of the mechanisms designed to increase ambition and compliance under the Paris Agreement and the Convention, only the global stocktake really considers adaptation information. So what are the components of this system? First, I will mention NDCs, which are used to communicate a country's top-level ambitions and pledges. The NDCs of developing countries also often include information on implementation needs as well. Inclusion of an adaptation component in the NDC is voluntary. To different level, countries also include some additional information in their NDCs that provide important background information about their national circumstances, vulnerability to climate change, and etc. Moving to the national adaptation plans. The NAPs, as we call them, are used to communicate the process and outputs of the country's NAP process. NAP process is UNFCCC endorsed adaptation planning process designed initially to assist least developed countries or LDCs and other developing countries to formulate and implement strategic plans to meet their medium-term to long-term adaptation needs. The NAP document actually is the plan as itself is output of this adaptation planning process. So the NAP is strategic planning documents that describes countries' adaptation strategy, like adaptation goals, priority areas, proposed actions, measures, etc., and also background context upon which the strategy is based, like information about countries' national circumstances, results of the assessments of the country's vulnerability to climate change, etc., etc. It is generally expected that countries that content of the NAP document should be strongly aligned with the NDC and priorities, goals, and flagship actions in the NDC should be the same or very, very similar to those in the NAP document. However, information in NAP is likely to be much more detailed than the one included in NDC, which considering also vulnerabilities, priorities, and actions described in more detail than NDC, etc. Since NDC is a more high-level document. The next instrument is equivalent national adaptation plans and strategies, which are actually non-UNFCCC endorsed national adaptation plan or document that perform largely the same role as a NAP. In other words, these documents or reports are still strategic planning documents that describe a country's adaptation strategy or plan, and only significant difference with NAP is that they are being conducted outside of UNFCCC process. So usually these instruments are used by countries that are not targeted by NAP process, like developed countries. So they are prepared their equivalent national adaptation plans and strategies, but not required to submit that to UNFCCC. So we are moving to the reporting-oriented instruments, of which the first one is well-known national communications. So NCs were original communication and reporting instrument and first one under the convention, and national communications were initially designed as a means of capturing all activity under the convention, including adaptation. There are two sets of the guidelines for the Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 countries. And vulnerability and adaptation chapter is mandatory for both Annex 1 and the non-Annex 1 countries. However, adaptation-related information required by both sets of the guidelines for national communication for Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 countries is very similar, meaning that both groups of countries and their national communications tend to contain very similar information. Usually that is about countries' exposure to vulnerability to climate change and the adaptation plans and actions they are planning or implementing. In addition to this, non-Annex 1 national communications often include information about proposed adaptation actions which have been identified through vulnerability assessment, as well as gaps, challenges, barriers, and their capacity needs. It is important to mention here that Decision 1 CP24 agreed in Katowice states that country may submit national communications and BTRs as a combined report using the guidelines provided in the MPGs. In these combined reports, this decision stipulates that the area of research and systematic observation and education, training and public awareness that are not covered by new MPGs should be prepared according to the guidelines provided by Decision 6 CP25 and 17 CP8 as appropriate, which are guidelines for the preparation of the national communications. This is a very specific and concrete indication that BTRs and national communications should be submitted together. So countries don't have to do this, but it will be a good opportunity for them to reduce the reporting burden. And finally, the last one is a biennial transparency report. And as a main reporting instrument under the ETF, BTRs are considering as a reporting-oriented document. So then there is a clear overlap between functions of the BTR and national communications. And also there is huge overlap between adaptation-focused guidelines of these two instruments. So countries using both instruments will need to be careful to avoid duplicating efforts when the submission deadlines of these instruments overlap. Even adaptation reporting is voluntary within the BTR. The guidelines for the BTR's adaptation section are significantly more detailed than those for national communications. So among other things, they include extensive guidance relating to reporting on results of monitoring and evaluation of the adaptation, then emphasize aspects of the national adaptation process that possible missing from many national communications, like adaptation priorities, monitoring and evaluation, etc. Also request information about how principles featured in the COP decision over the years have been integrated in the planning and implementation of adaptation process. For example, to describe on how countries performed stakeholders engagement, how do they consider gender issues, how they mainstream traditional knowledge, etc., etc. Overall, it is anticipated that the adaptation section of the BTRs will be more comprehensive than past and present national communication submitted. And finally, moving to the adaptation communication, that's established by Article 7 of the Paris Agreement, and the official purpose of the ADCOMS, adaptation communications, is to increase visibility and profile of the adaptation and to make some balance with mitigation. Then to strengthen adaptation action and support for developing countries, then to provide input to global stocktake and to enhance learning and understanding of adaptation needs and actions. Also, the Paris Agreement states that adaptation communication shall be submitted as a component of or in conjunction with other communication instruments. This meaning that countries should submit an adaptation communication at the same time as or as a part of another report, which sometimes can stating that another report represents one's adaptation communication. According to the Paris Agreement, the adaptation communication is not obligatory, so countries are not obliged to submit one, and they are flexible and country-driven, so this means that countries are able to determine how to use it. In the line with this, guidelines for adaptation communication contains 9 general high-level elements that you can see on the left side of these slides. So these elements closely reflect information requested by the guidelines for the BTR, so they are overlapping on most of the issues or requested information. This actually suggests that this is a reporting oriented instrument, and also the use of the prefix may means that countries can pick and choose which elements they want to include in the document, and on what way allowing on that way they allowing the adaptation communication to be used in a number of ways. So you have here on the left side of the slide elements of the adaptation communication, and it's completely under the countries to choose which way or which information they will provide within their adaptation communications. By now, or by May of this year, which is the last date that I updated this information. So by the May of this year, 64 countries have submitted adaptation communication, and most of these were standalone reports, and most of the remaining were NDCs that were retrospectively assigned to be their adaptation communications, with handful of NatComs also and NAPs submitted as adaptation communications. So in regard of adaptation communications, the countries until now have submitted information or adaptation communication on different ways, like resubmitted the adaptation component of their NDC as an adaptation communication, also resubmitted their NAPs or equivalent plans and strategies as an adaptation communication, also resubmitted the vulnerability and adaptation chapter of the national communication as an adaptation communication, and finally submitted the adaptation communication as a standalone reporting-oriented document. As we consider here adaptation communication as a reporting-oriented instrument submitted with or alongside with the BTRs or with the national communication, it could in fact be placed in conjunction with the NDCs, with the NAPS or equivalent national adaptation strategy, or as a standalone document, as I said, this depending on the preference of each country. So what are the changes, or how this new system changed from the previous one? When it comes to adaptation reporting, the new system under the ETF is coming to force in 2024 and represent a significant step up from the present system, while this is not the case for the other topics under the convention. So the new system for reporting on adaptation oversees the introduction of two new instruments that provide flexibility with regards how how countries report on adaptation. Also, the new system provides a significant enhancement of its reporting guidelines for example, and as you see through presentations and in next sessions, the guidelines for the BTR are more complete and detailed than one for national communications, and in general use stronger language. And also the new system provides opportunity to increase frequency of the adaptation reporting from once every 4 years to every 2 years. However, reporting through BTRs and adaptation communication is still voluntary. So countries can of course, continue to report on adaptation under the previous system. That means that you can continue to report adaptation through the national communication every 4 years, and by using the guidelines provided previously for the reporting adaptation within the national communication. So then, what is the introduction of the adaptation BTR intended to achieve? Conclusions on that, on what is intention of the introduction of the BTR can be found in the official purpose that's given for the establishment of the ETF, Enhanced Transparency Framework, that states that the ETF is intended to provide a clear understanding of climate change action, including parties' adaptation actions, including related good practices, priorities, needs, and gaps. And also it states that it's intended to inform the global stocktake. This actually support the conclusion that the adaptation BTR is intended to have a similar function as the adaptation chapter of national communications. So actually to provide a snapshot of countries' national adaptation process. So as you know, that include information about countries' vulnerability to climate change, how the country is adapting to this vulnerability, and also any adaptation needs or gaps that countries may have. This purpose provided in Decision 18 CMA1 also suggests that it is intended to, with the introduction of the new system, it is intended to contribute to collective pool of good practice and lessons learned in adaptation, also to facilitate recognition of adaptation efforts from developing countries, and to contribute to collective understanding of the status of adaptation at the global and regional levels. This suggests that BTR is intended also to facilitate reporting that is more comprehensive than is presently submitted, and enables the sharing of good practice knowledge and lessons learned. Both these conclusions are supported by the contents of the actual guidelines of the adaptation BTR, which we will look at the next slides. We will just here provide the overview of the guidelines. But before we go through the guidelines and sections of the adaptation BTR, it is important also to mention that including adaptation section in one's biennial transparency report is voluntary. So as such, all elements of the guidelines are also voluntary, meaning that countries are not obliged to include everything asked by the guidelines. The guidelines are guidelines, not prescriptions, so don't be distracted with so many requests. This means that process of reporting on adaptation in the ABTR is an entirely country-driven exercise, with countries therefore able to take whatever approach to reporting they desire, including what information they choose to include and how they choose to include it. Also, the majority requests made by the guidelines use prefix parties should, which means that parties are suggested to fulfill this request if they can, but they are not obliged to do so. Other requests use prefix parties may, which means which is actually less stringent and means that the request is considered optional and not suggested. So this is the overview. On this slide, you can see overview of the guidelines of the BTR. So let's see what is the requested by the guidelines. So the guidelines are provided 9 sections from A to I, which serve to divide many requests contained with the guidelines into general areas of information. The titles of each section provide very good indications on what kind of the information should include or to be included in the adaptation BTR. So as expected, the major share of the guidelines are focused on how countries should report on their national adaptation process, which you can see in the section from A to F, which are highlighted in red. And they're providing instructions how countries should report on the provision of the relevant background information like national circumstances and the climate change impacts they are experiencing. Also, what are information about the adaptation priorities and barriers to adaptation, then adaptation plans, policies and actions, and finally, to the progress made in implementing these plans, policies, and actions, and their outcomes and impacts, also including monitoring and evaluation of the adaptation process. Alongside the guidelines for reporting on adaptation, Section G that you see here highlighted in green contains guidelines that allow countries to report on loss and damage if they so wish. So meanwhile, Section H that you see here highlighted in blue asks and ask the countries to include in their adaptation sections information about related activities that support adaptation. For example, guidelines within this section, I ask countries to report on international collaborations and networking events that countries is involved in, and efforts to strengthen systematic observation systems and research related to adaptation. And finally, Section I does not concern a specific sub-area for adaptation or related theme, but instead allows countries to include every other information related to the climate change impacts or adaptation, which otherwise is not covered by the guidelines. So thank you very much. This was the first part of our presentation for today. And I would be more than happy if you have some questions or need some clarifications for information that we have provided in this first part. So
Thanks.
Brittany, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Lajana. Very, very comprehensive overview of adaptation reporting, and also the differences between the reporting requirements from the convention, the UNFCCC, and then now the newer requirements, the differences with the new adaptation reporting requirements and soft codes, because as you mentioned, it's voluntary for countries and discretionary as to what countries choose to report on in their adaptation efforts. So to our colleagues in the room, yes, I would like to invite you to think about what do the reporting arrangements in your country look like, and in reflecting on the overview session that Slajana provided, what does it look like for your country? Does your country have various arrangements in the way that it reports on adaptation? But let's start with the first one. I know a few countries here have some NAPs, or have all countries here have had an adaptation chapter in their national communications, but let's hear what are the arrangements like in your countries? Let's see. And you're welcome to go off mic as well. Turn on your mic, or put on your camera, as well as in the chat.
If I can just add here, why is that important to think about present arrangements for communicating and reporting your adaptation to the UNFCCC system, and why we actually mentioned all these instruments. It's of great importance as a source of information for your adaptation part of the BTR. So in that context, it's important to think about what instruments do you have already, or reports you have already submitted. So there is a great variety of the information you can use for your BTR. So even if you don't have any new information or research or anything about loss and damage, which is actually some new reporting information within the UNFCCC framework, you can choose to report adaptation within your BTR with the instruments and information that you already have. So mapping of the instruments, available instruments and information contained there is very, very important for preparation of your BTRs. So it would be nice to hear what instruments or reporting arrangements in regards to the adaptation you have, whether they are, I'm sure that you all have already submitted several national communications and maybe NAPs, adaptation communications, for sure, NDCs. So please, yeah, you can add your thoughts and information related to your country context.
Yes, thanks, Lajana. Any volunteers? I see a few countries here. I know Jamaica. They have has some experience in different reporting instruments. Is there anyone from Jamaica that has any insights? Okay, so I have in the chat our colleague Adrian is certain that about NDCs and NAPs, right? And that is from Jamaica, correct?
Yeah, that can be a great starting point for your adaptation part of BTR. And thank you for this information.
Yes, excellent. And are there any from the countries, and even this could be not just from the countries, but also from our regional organizations present, if you have any insights. I see we have a few hands. I think the first was Paling from Suriname, and then I'll hand it over to Ansel.
Please unmute your microphone.
Please unmute.
Yeah.
Our colleague from Suriname, you had your hand up first. Please go ahead if your hand was up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm not sure if my hand was up, but I'm Consuela Palu. I'm from the Forestry Authority. I can share some insights. I'm not the adaptation expert, but we do contribute to the different national reporting. As such, one of the reporting was the National Adaptation Plan. As for now, we have a workshop ongoing regarding the progress of this National Adaptation Plan. So I think after the workshop, we will have an indication of what has been implementing during the years related to adaptation. But just from my view and my experience contributing to the national report, we did submit a national determined contribution to the UNFCCC. We also submit several forest reference emission level reports and some technical annexes. We did some technical assessment review. And I think with that, it is a good starting point to have the arrangement in place as it comes to the BTR reporting, as we are also planning to submit by the end of this year our first BTR. With that, I hope I contributed to this discussion, and looking forward to learn from other countries. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Consuela. And yeah, also looking forward to the to Suriname's first BTR. I know it's a lot of work, but you're right that the previous reports and NDCs, etc., is a good head start, good set of experience to take that in forward. Okay, so then I will hand it to Ansel and then to Sherwin.
Thanks, colleagues. Ansel, the one here from the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. I serve in the capacity of the lead project manager. We're not so directly involved in some of the national processes like reporting to the UNFCCC. However, I do know that we support the countries in recently, for example, we helped Belize completed its NDC for the water sector. And I know my colleague who is with us, Earl Green, is working on a project with St. Vincent and the Grenadines in developing a national adaptation plan and some, I think, SASAP, I would think, Earl. And I think through other investments, we're also helping countries updating their NDCs, right? But so one of the reasons we are in part here, a number of us, is that we help countries for the most part manage projects, implement projects. But we believe that in addition to helping manage projects, we also want to help countries meet their international obligations, their global obligations, right? And so it's not just a matter of developing the adaptation plan, and here it is. We would want to be in a position also to be able to help whichever way is possible to meet those global obligations. And so we know, for example, that the adaptation plans will help countries fulfill their obligations in addition to doing what is necessary nationally, but fulfill their obligations under the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. But we also want to be in a position, if it is necessary, to help them meet those additional obligations reporting, and for us to become familiar with what the deficiencies are, what the strengths are. That would be useful for us too. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that, your perspective, Ansel, from the another regional organization standpoint. You're right. Lots of, apart from just meeting the international obligations for reporting, the implementation step is also important to actually get the work moving in country. So thanks so much for that perspective, and thanks for being here also. Sherwin, please, from Antigua and Barbuda.
Very good day, everyone. I mostly have a question, but just to give background context, Antigua and Barbuda, we have the NDC, and we're also looking to update those NDCs. But in terms of adaptation, we have the NAP, which is kind of completed, more or less completed. So I wanted to know if we can use this to support us in the adaptation chapter of the BTR. Or like, can we submit it with the BTR? Like, I don't know if you understand my question, more or less.
Okay, thank you very much for this question. Yes, we can support you with your adaptation chapter within the BTR. Yeah, we can continue our communication in that regard to see what's actually the issue and how we can support you. So thank you very much. And also, I'm very glad to see here representatives of other regional organizations that support countries. I'm glad because we are on the same path of supporting countries to meet their international obligations. And I hope really that in the future we will have some opportunities also to work together at a regional or maybe at a country, national or country level. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Lachana. We have another hand raised in the crowd. Lucina, please tell us. And please tell us where you're joining us from. We can't hear you, Lucina, if your mic is off. So we can't hear you, Lucina, but please let us know also if you're able to put it in the chat so that we can get your questions answered. hear your views. And just to go back on the question that our colleague from Antigua and Barbuda had on the content of the NAPs, if that would also be relevant to be used for preparing your BTR chapter. So yes, definitely there's always information that that you'd be able to use and replicate, especially in terms of describing the national context or the the, the prioritization of the certain areas, and also the as Lajana had mentioned in her presentation, the different areas, reporting areas for the adaptation chapter of the BTR are also discretionary. So you can report what you have available, and what you consider relevant. So that would be a good starting point, especially if it's recent. But any questions of that nature, we can also take offline, and that would also be we'd also be happy to support others who have those direct country questions with how they can support from their existing national documents into their BTR. Okay, see. Okay, Lucina, she was going to talk about the arrangements from Guyana. If you're able to, you can try again. We still have some time to hear. Okay, so please let us know in the chat, and we can always take it up in the following discussion session. So sorry that we're not able to hear your voice, but please let us know in whichever way that you can. Okay. So then, thanks everyone for your engagement and sharing of experiences. We will still have some more opportunity after the second segment that Sljana is going to take us through on expanding the purpose of adaptation reporting. So back to you, Sljana. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Brittany. So let me share or continue with the, do you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's see what other purposes the adaptation BTR may have. So with this presentation, I would like to share some thoughts with you about more information about relevance and reach of the adaptation reporting. Also to note some trade-offs between comprehensiveness and depth, usefulness and viability of the national reports, and also to present some ideas and mechanisms for reducing duplication of effort and unnecessary burdens associated with the reporting. So, as mentioned in the last presentation, the general idea behind of reporting on adaptation under the UNFCCC is to inform COP negotiations and associated processes about how the reporting country is vulnerable to climate change, where the reporting country wants to be in relation to its vulnerability to climate change, like visions, priority, goals, and targets. So what is the country's adaptation goal, for instance? So what the reporting country has done or is planning to do to achieve this vision or address the priority areas, reach goals and targets, what progress the country has made thus far, and what challenges, barriers, and gaps the country is facing, and what support needs the country has. So the UNFCCC and parties to UNFCCC are clearly the main target audience for this report. But as national reports that are publicly available, these documents also can be used as a mechanisms for communicating this information to a wide range of the other stakeholders. Stakeholders that could be informed through these reports include domestic and international actors, as you can see here on this slide, like domestic stakeholders, which are all levels of the government, from local to national ministries and institutions, which are, from my point of view, very, very important from any climate change processes implementation, from planning to implementation and evaluating the actions and measures. Since if you have a political agreement to plan or to go to a certain direction, you will be more able to dedicate to your, for instance, in this case, to your adaptation planning and implementation of your entire adaptation process. So political buy-in is of the crucial importance for all processes related to the climate change. Also, as of the domestic stakeholders, there are also national and local NGOs and civil society groups, since they are directly connected with the citizens. Then academia, as you know, the provider of the new research, new knowledge, assessments, analysis, etc. Then private sector then can support your efforts, adaptation efforts, then media, general public, etc., etc. So as of the international stakeholders, these are the other countries or other parties of the Paris and Convention of the Climate Change, then other countries in the capacities of the donor, then agencies or as multilateral donors like GCF, GEF, etc., international NGOs, international partners for example, for project implementation, academia and research institutions, also private sector. So decision on a country to take advantage of this is, of course, necessary to be self-determined by each country. For countries that see value in this, leveraging reporting documents as a mechanism for communicating with other audience will mean actively tailoring the contents that focus of these reports to match the informal needs of the target stakeholder groups that you identify in your process. So this is possible within the framework provided by different guidelines for the national communications, BTRs and adaptation communications, since the guidelines for these instruments do not tell countries how to include this information, and doing so would not change substantive content addressed by the reports. So reports would still provide information about vulnerability, adaptation process, support needs, etc. So to a certain context, national reports submitted to UNFCCC will engage these stakeholders regardless of whether they are considered during its preparation, simply because they are high profile documents and they are publicly available. So countries wishing to leverage these reports in this manner need to consider which other stakeholders are we interested in engaging with this report, and what information do we want to provide them with? Is the relevant information about the subject area, theme, or sector available? And when addressing this area, are we providing enough detail and clarity about the topic to meet the informational needs for information of these stakeholders? With that, I mean here that if country wishes to demonstrate that they are prioritizing and addressing the needs of vulnerable groups like women, minorities, indigenous people, it would be beneficial for countries to include descriptive information about what the government's ambitions are in this policy area and what is being done to realize these ambitions. So, for example, for gender, what and how are gender considerations being integrated in adaptation planning? Likewise, clearly and comprehensively articulating specific vulnerabilities, adaptation priorities, and support needs in a highly visible public document is likely to provide your country with stronger starting point for negotiations with multilateral and bilateral donors. It could also provide other actors with your own within your own government and non-state actors with a stronger starting point to develop and implement relevant policies and actions and mainstream adaptation consideration in their existing decision-making processes. So in addition to reaching wider stakeholders, reporting on adaptation also has a potential important role in contributing to collective pool of knowledge and good practices regarding adaptation actions and approaches, facilitating recognition of adaptation by developing countries, and furthering our collective understanding of the status of adaptation at the global and also regional level. Also, countries wishing to use adaptation reporting to realize any of these possibilities would need to consider this when they prepare reports. For example, countries wishing to communicate good practices and experiences, lessons learned, policies or other approaches may need to consider which good practice lessons learned are priority to communicate, and if the information that has been provided is sufficiently clear, detailed, and complete for relevant readers to be informed or to be inspired. So the next question that we would like to answer here is what are the trade-offs between comprehensiveness and depth and usableness and viability within this report. So some trade-offs related to reporting on adaptation through BTR is since as I mentioned already, the BTR is more comprehensive than reporting that has generally been done through the national communications, and is intended to facilitate sharing of lessons learned and can be utilized to communicate with a range of different stakeholders outside of the UNF CCC and COP process. Amongst other things, there is a clearly trade-offs to be made when preparing these reports, as report cannot be all things at all times. So further, even if it could, it's likely that the report would be too heavy to be useful for the readers. Also, there are clearly issues relating to how viable it is to try and to achieve everything possible through reporting given resource constraints that countries have more or less specifically developing countries. And as such, when producing the reports, countries will be tasked with balancing what they want their reports to achieve against what is possible to provide given their resources. So in order to reduce duplication of efforts and undue burdens related to reporting, for for majority of the countries, reporting through every available reporting-oriented instrument separately will make a significant burden that has a relatively little payoff. And then, when appropriate, countries can reduce this burden by taking advantage of the significant and obvious synergies between these reporting instruments. The most obvious means of doing this would be to combine these reports when their submission timetables align. So, for example, countries can submit and combine a report that constitutes national communication and BTR. Then another way is to combine national communication and adaptation communication. Then also you can combine BTR and adaptation communication. And finally, three instruments: national communication, BTR, and adaptation communication. So for national communications and BTR, this in theory should happen once every 4 years. And the combined submissions, including the adaptation communication, however, will depend on how country chooses to use its adaptation communication and when it decides to submit together these two reports. So this is one table with the cross-analysis of the guidelines for the national communications, adaptation communication, and the BTR conducted by the Adaptation Committee. And it visualizes the significant overlaps in the adaptation relevant guidelines for these instruments. So that means that you can combine information provided within these instruments or reports. So analysis shows that countries looking to combine reporting requirements should use guidelines for the BTR as a starting point. Excuse me. Because guidelines for BTR have the greatest coverage across all relevant areas of information. In fact, the only missing are guidelines for providing information about implementation and support needs for developing countries, and the guidelines for providing information about how adaptation action is contributing to the objectives of other international frameworks like the SDGs, Sendai, etc. So countries that want to include this information in a combined report would need to report on these areas using the relevant guidelines for other instruments. In the case of areas that I mentioned now, this would be guidelines for the adaptation communication. Also, in order to streamline adaptation reporting, countries can take advantage of the provision included in the ETF that enables countries to cross-reference previously reported information and focus its reporting on updates to previously reported information. under the ETF, this provision is only applicable to information relating to adaptation. And this actually provides countries with an effective means of reducing the quantity of information that they need to include in the actual BTR document without leading to the information being lost. Cross-referencing would apply to the previous UNFCCC report and could be used, for example, to refer to the results of the climate change projections and vulnerability assessment in the previous reports, like national communications, when these projections and assessments still represent the latest projections and assessment available to the reporting countries. Also, there is no reason why countries cannot also use cross-referencing more generally, or by using, for example, the hyperlink to direct readers to other documents and resources that contain additional or relevant information that's not initially included in main report. This actually may represent an efficient means of providing certain stakeholders with specialist information that may be too long or too technical to include in the main document. In practice, the resources that readers are directed to will need to be in the same language as the original report and only online and publicly available. So countries using this option should be aware that not everyone, even those who should be interested in the additional information, will click on these links. And to mitigate this, authors can clearly describe what information can be found in these external documents. So I think that I've exhausted all my slides and the information I intended to share with you today. I would like to thank you for your attention. And of course, if you have some questions or maybe some comments, please raise your hand and unmute your mic. So I'm available for your comments. Thank you very much. Brittany, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lajana. And yes, thank you for the remainder of your presentation. I think the points that you made specifically on reducing undue burden addresses some of the questions we had in the first part of your presentation. With all of the different mechanisms of adaptation reporting, the ability to cross-reference and link and take the viewer to exactly where they can find more specific information is very helpful. Do we have any questions or comments for Slajana on any of the things that she discussed in the last portion of the segment? I know we had some comments in the chat, which I think are also very relevant, and with our colleagues from Guyana. I think both from Guyana. Lucina saying, however, within the last year, having submitted the BUR and BTR for Guyana, they also submitted their third national communication, and next year hoping to revise the national determined contribution and submit our NAP. So they have a central coordinating agency, which is the Department of Environment and Climate Change, and the other information that is submitted from the sector. because they've worked on so many reports in a short period. They were be able to use their information more effectively. And thank you for sharing this. I think this is very helpful for all the countries who have are burdened with various different types of reports, BTRs, uh, inventory reports, adaptation communications, NAPs. It's good to see that it was even reporting all in a short period. You're able to uh, place these chapters and this information effectively across your main reports. And so going forward, this might not be the case, but capacity will continue to be developed. So uh, excellent. And I think we also could take some learning from Guyana, who were the first in the region to submit their BTR this year, and second in the world, right? So uh, we'll be looking forward to hearing some more uh, tips and experiences from your perspective as well. And then we also have from Maria in Guyana, uh, to sharing some information on Guyana's perspective on adaptation measures. Because Guyana is a country situated below sea level, the national adaptation plans play a critical part of their reporting. Hence, measures such as mangrove restoration on their coast, as well as sea defenses, are put in place in addition. That these measures are put in place, and maintenance of canal and conservation efforts are priority. So I think this is definitely the case also uh, for everyone, especially in the Caribbean region, low-lying countries and SIDS on a whole, small island developing states on a whole. So thanks for sharing these perspectives. Uh, and just to, are there any other questions or comments on maybe some of the practical areas of putting together uh, the adaptation component of BTRs or adaptation communications from? Yes, we have another comment that came in the chat from Adrian. I'm sure that SIDS have the opportunity to report on loss and damage as well. Yes, definitely, and it's one of the newer areas of reporting, right, Slajana? So this
Yes,
there's
yes,
less.
yes, you are right. And as you know, Section G of the BTR consists some guidelines or information requirements in regards of the loss and damage. And as I can remember, we will talk about that in our fourth session. So yes, we have information on that. But also what I would like to comment here, or actually to share some information with you, since I've recently had opportunity to hear experience from the South Korea about their NAP process. And how they manage, the different production actually and development of different reports that they need to submit to UNFCCC. They saw that every year they need to prepare and submit several reports. So then they prepared a simple table or a timetable indicating due date for each report or document. So they visualized their reporting obligations, and on that way it was easier to them to decide how to combine different reporting instruments and how to prepare them on time. And I will try to find that slide to show you as an example of how some countries solved, I would say managed that issue of too many reports that countries needs to develop and submit. Over to
Excellent.
you. Yeah, we have a
Thank you.
hand
Yeah,
raised.
here we go. Consuela, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again also for the presentation. And I do agree that we need to find a solution on how to coordinate among the different reports that needs to be submitted to UNFCCC, taking into account also the small team we have, especially in Suriname, but also the capacity and experience, little capacity and little experience, all also with the new reporting of the BTR. So trying to make sure that we report on time, we also need to build capacity on what is required in the different reports. And I'm glad with that, given the example of South Korea, where you can have a more coordinated approach as to know when you want to report which reports. And then you can look at the cross-cutting or overlapping chapters where you can have the coordination on engagement strategy, especially when you need the information from several stakeholders, right? So just making sure you make the effectively, how you say, time use of these stakeholders when it comes to providing us the information. So I just wanted to make this remark, especially as a developing country, making sure we have the reporting on time. It's also a challenge for us to have the capacity built, to have the arrangement in place. As for now, a lot of reporting are being done ad hoc with consultants having those capacity and expertise. So it's also a challenge for us to build capacity on the governmental institution to be able to do these reports by ourselves. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Consuela, for this comment. Maybe it's boring, but I'm repeating all the time that institutional arrangements and legal framework for all processes are of crucial importance. So if you don't have, established processes for the reporting, for the tracking information in your country, you cannot prepare your documents or report on time. So it's of crucial importance, and I'm very glad that somebody else, not just me, mentioned that, because it's really, really important. And also you said that you have your NAP document and you're preparing a workshop to discuss progress of your NAP. So I'm very glad to hear that, since I think the planning is everything besides of the institutional arrangements, which is really first and initial step for adaptation process. But for any process, for any change, for achievement of any goal, you have to have your plan. So planning is also the second crucial issue that each country needs to consider in order to achieve their goals. So for the planning, you can make the plan, but if you don't revise or evaluate what you have done, where your actions are, your actions and measures are effective, or what results of your planning process or adaptation process in your country, you just have then a paper. So I'm glad to hear that you are in the process now of discussing progress or evaluating progress of your NAP, which for certain will serve as a great information for the next cycle of your adaptation planning process. So well done, really. Over to you, Brittany.
Excellent. No, thank you, and I appreciate everyone's engagement. We appreciate the sharing of your experience and the progress that you've made, and also your plans. I think the practical exchange of the how countries are doing or have done their national processes to get their reports out on time, but also to have it be relevant to your stakeholders at home and on the ground is very important. So thank you everyone for sharing um, uh, the very relevant and useful points. So I would like to then continue just a little bit to have each of us participate in a short quiz to see how everyone is doing. So we have a short 3-question quiz, and let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I invite everyone to to either scan the QR code or go to www.menti.com and enter the code that's on the screen to take a short quiz on this first session. I see we have one person in, so just give a thumbs up in Menti once you're in, and then we'll just waiting for a few more to get in. We have 4, 5, 6.
Hi, I'm unable to see the code.
Okay, the code is 1356, and I'll put it in the chat as well. 13568339.
And that's MENTEE.com.
MENTI.com.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Also put that in the chat. Okay. We have a few people in. All right, we have 12, 13 of us, 14. Don't worry, you'll be able to join as we get in. Okay. They have some bumblebees and footballs and flowers, etc. Okay. All correct answers give them max points. When did countries start to systematically report to the UNFCCC regarding the national climate situations? What year? Give 10 more seconds. All right, got the majority with the right answer. So that was in 1994. Was the first year when countries started to systematically report to the UNFCCC. Excellent, very good. All right, so well done to these participants. Everyone with 1,000. So question 2, ready? We are. What were the first climate reports countries submitted to the UNFCCC? From those options: national communications, NAPs, NCs, NDCs, and BURs, NAPs and NCs, NCs and BURs. Thanks for those showing some love with the hearts. Okay. So excellent. So under the convention, right, the first climate change report were the national communications. So very good for those with your climate change history. All right, so we got Bodie McBoatface Mars, and others all tapping in for first place. And last question. Which instruments available under the UNFCCC can countries use to communicate, report on adaptation? So we have various there. Ooh, okay. Very good. So majority got it right. So all of the above. So we have national communications, national adaptation plans, NDCs, adaptation communications, and the BTR, biennial transparency reports, are all instruments available that countries can use to communicate. And it will then just be of the interest of the country as to which, how you can streamline these reports and make cross references to reduce the burden. But there are all of these various available. So excellent, well done. Let's see who took us to first place. All right, so it's a tie. So well done, and to Mars, Bell, Nick, okay, Nicholas, Chelsea, and Bodie McBoat. So thanks everyone for participating, and well done to our top 5. I see some of those were anonymous, but you know who you are for those who got them right. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for your participation in today's webinar, and also for your contributions to this discussion, on your national perspectives from our regional point of view, which is also very important. And also would like to say thank you to our speaker and our good friend here, Slajana, for providing us with all of this information on adaptation reporting under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. This is the first of 5 sessions occurring this month. The next session, session 2, will be on October 15th. So that's next week, Tuesday, October 15th at the same time. And we will be reviewing then reporting on national circumstances and vulnerabilities. So more on the arrangements, on the institutional arrangements, national circumstances, legal frameworks regarding adaptation reporting under the ETF. So we welcome everyone to join again. You are also we also encourage you to share these sessions with your colleagues or those who may find it relevant. This isn't a closed discussion, so to those who may find it relevant, please do feel free to share this with them. We will be sharing today's sessions, recording, as well as presentation with you all via the Climate Transparency platform, and also by email. And we will share the subsequent link for session 2 following the session by email as well. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time and participation today, and we'll see you next week Tuesday, same time. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you all for participation, and see you next week. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you to us, ladies.